The smell hit me before anything else. Industrial soap and something underneath it, something tired, like the building itself had given up trying. I was there to drop off a coat, that's it. My coworker had asked me to bring her mother's winter jacket to Ridgewood Assisted Living because she'd thrown out her back and couldn't drive. Simple errand, 20 minutes tops. I wasn't supposed to see him, I wasn't supposed to feel anything. But then I turned the wrong corner. The east wing was quieter than the rest of the building, almost hollow. Most of the doors were closed, and the ones that weren't revealed rooms, so still they looked staged. And there, in the last room on the left, sitting in a wheelchair parked too far from the window to actually see outside, was Howard Keating, my ex-father-in-law. I stopped walking. My hand was still holding the coat. For a full 5 seconds I just stood there, staring at the back of his head. That thin white hair I used to see across the Thanksgiving table every November for 6 years. He was wearing a hospital gown that looked like it hadn't been changed recently, and his hands sat in his lap like they'd forgotten what they were for. My name is Lydia Conley. I was married to Craig Keating for 6 years, divorced for almost 4. The divorce was ugly. Craig had an affair with a woman from his office, got her pregnant, married her within 5 months of our papers being signed. Family took his side, every single one of them. His mother called me dramatic. His sister unfriended me on everything. And Howard just went quiet. He never said anything cruel, but he never said anything kind either. He just disappeared the way old men do when they don't want to pick a side. So I had no reason to walk into that room. No reason at all. But I did. Howard? He didn't turn right away. When he finally did, it was slow, like his body needed permission from somewhere deep inside to move. His eyes found me, and for a second they were completely blank. Then something flickered. "Do I know you?" he asked. "It's Lydia. Craig's." I paused. "I used to be married to your son." He stared at me for a long time. Then his lips moved, barely. "Lydia, the girl who made the lemon cake." My throat tightened. Every Easter I used to bring a lemon pound cake to the family gathering. Howard always had 2 slices. He'd say the same thing every time. "This is the only reason I show up." It was a joke, but he meant it a little. "Yeah," I said, "that's me." He nodded slowly, then looked back toward the window. He couldn't quite reach. "They moved me here," he said, like he was telling me the weather, "a few months ago, maybe longer. I don't always know what day it is." I pulled a chair from the corner and sat beside him. The room had no photographs. No flowers, no books. Just a bed, a nightstand with a plastic cup on it, and a small television mounted on the wall that wasn't turned on. "Does Craig visit?" I asked. Howard's jaw shifted slightly. "He comes when he needs something," he said. I didn't ask what that meant. Not yet. I dropped off the coat, drove home, and sat in my car in the driveway for 10 minutes before going inside. I kept seeing his hands, the way they just sat there, like they'd already let go of everything. I went back 3 days later. I told myself it was just to check on him. I brought a small bag of tangerines because I remembered he liked citrus. When I walked in, he was in the same spot, same wheelchair, same distance from the window. This time, a nurse was adjusting his blanket. "Does he get visitors?" I asked her quietly in the hallway. She looked at me the way people do when they're deciding how honest to be. "His son came about 6 weeks ago," she said. "Brought some paperwork. Stayed maybe 20 minutes. Paperwork?" She shrugged. "I just saw him carrying a folder. That's all I know." I thanked her and went back in. Howard was more awake that day. He talked about the food, hated it. Talked about the woman across the hall who sang hymns at 3 in the morning. Talked about a bird that used to land on his windowsill but stopped coming. Small things. Safe things. But every now and then, he'd trail off mid-sentence, his eyes would drift, and I could see him leaving, going somewhere I couldn't follow. Then he'd come back, blink, and pick up a completely different thread like nothing happened. I started visiting every week. Sometimes twice. I brought tangerines, magazines he wouldn't read, and once, a small portable radio so he could listen to the Braves games. He used to love baseball. He'd sit with his ear close to the speaker, eyes half closed, and for those few hours he looked like himself again. It was during my 4th visit that it happened. I was getting ready to leave. I'd been there about an hour, and he'd been quieter than usual, not confused, just still. I stood up, grabbed my purse, told him I'd see him Thursday, and then his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. I flinched, not because it hurt, but because of the strength behind it. This was not the hand of a frail man. His grip was firm, deliberate, and when I looked at his face, his eyes were sharper than I'd ever seen them. Even sharper than the old Howard, the one who used to argue politics at dinner and never lost. "They're stealing from me," he said. My blood went cold. "What?" "My house. The accounts. Craig and that woman." His voice was low, urgent, like he knew the clarity wouldn't last. "I wouldn't sign. That's why I'm here." I said no, "so they put me here, Howard." He pulled me closer. "There's a lockbox," he whispered. "In my bedroom closet. Blue metal, everything's in there. Don't let him get it." His grip loosened, his eyes softened. The sharpness drained out of him like water through a crack, and just like that, he was gone again. He blinked at me. "Were you leaving, dear?" I drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing his voice. Not the confused, fading version, but the real one. The one that grabbed my wrist and told me something he'd probably been trying to tell someone for months. I went back and forth in my head. Maybe it was the dementia talking. Maybe he was confused, paranoid, mixing up memories. People with cognitive decline do that. But the nurse said Craig brought paperwork, and Howard said he wouldn't sign. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do after the divorce. I called Craig's sister, Melinda. She picked up on the third ring. "Lydia?" she said, her voice already defensive. "Why are you calling me? Have you visited your father recently?" Silence then. "That's not really your concern anymore." "He's alone in a nursing home, Melinda. He has no pictures in his room. No one visits him. He doesn't even know what day it is." More silence. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. "Craig is handling everything. Dad signed over power of attorney months ago. It's taken care of." I hung up, sat on my kitchen floor, and then I got angry. Not the kind of angry that makes you yell. The kind that makes you get very, very quiet and start thinking clearly. The next day I didn't go to Ridgewood. I went to the county clerk's office. I requested public records on Howard Keating's property, a 3-bedroom house on Sycamore Lane that he'd owned outright for 31 years, fully paid off. The clerk pulled it up. "There's a pending transfer," she said, scrolling. "Filed about 2 months ago. Ownership transfer to Craig Keating and Vanessa Keating." My stomach turned. "Has it been finalized?" "Not yet. It's still in review. Looks like there was an issue with the notarization on the consent form." An issue. Meaning something didn't add up. Meaning someone had rushed. Meaning Howard probably hadn't fully understood what he was signing, or hadn't signed it at all. I spent the next 3 days doing research. I called a legal aid hotline. I spoke with an elder law attorney named Mr. Drummond, who listened to everything I told him and said, very calmly, "If what you're describing is accurate, this could constitute elder financial abuse under Georgia state law." Those words sat in my chest like a stone. On Thursday, I went back to Ridgewood, but this time, when I walked into Howard's room, I wasn't alone. Craig was there. He was leaning over his father's bed, holding a clipboard, speaking in that voice I knew too well. Soft, patient, the voice he used when he wanted something and needed you to think it was your idea. "Just this last one, Dad. Same as before, just your signature right here." Howard's hand was hovering over the paper, trembling, not from weakness, from hesitation. I stepped into the room. "He doesn't need to sign anything." Craig turned. The color left his face for exactly 1 second. Then it came back, harder. "Lydia, what the hell are you doing here?" "Visiting your father. Something you'd know about if you did it more than once every 6 weeks with a stack of papers." He straightened up. "This is a family matter." I looked at Howard. He was watching me, his eyes somewhere between lost and found. Then he said, very quietly, "She brings me tangerines." Craig exhaled through his nose. "Dad, she's not family anymore." I stepped closer. "What are you asking him to sign, Craig? That's none of your business. Then you won't mind if someone else looks at it." His jaw tightened. Behind him the door opened again. Vanessa. I'd only seen her twice before. Once at the courthouse during the divorce. Once at a grocery store where we both pretended we didn't see each other. She was tall, sharp-featured, and dressed like she'd come from brunch, not a nursing home. "Oh, wonderful," she said, crossing her arms. "The ex-wife is here. Is this a hobby for you?" I ignored her. I kept my eyes on the clipboard. "Craig," I said slowly, "if those documents are legitimate and Howard understands them, then there's no problem with a third party reviewing them, right?" He didn't move, right? I said again. Howard reached out and pushed the clipboard off the bed. It clattered to the floor. "I'm tired of signing things," he said. "I don't want to sign anything." Vanessa sighed loudly. "He doesn't know what he's saying. He's confused." "He seems pretty clear to me," I said. Craig picked up the clipboard. "You need to leave, Lydia." "No." The room went very still. I said, "No, Craig. And I'm not the only one." I've already spoken with an attorney. I've seen the property transfer filing at the county clerk's office. I know what you're doing. Craig's face changed. Not anger, not exactly. Fear. The kind of fear that looks like anger if you're not paying attention. You don't know what you're talking about, he said, but his voice had lost its smoothness. I know that Howard's house is paid off and worth over $400,000. I know you filed for a transfer 2 months ago with a consent form that had notarization issues. I know you put your father in this facility 3 weeks after he refused to sign the first time. And I know that under Georgia law, obtaining financial documents from a cognitively impaired person without proper legal oversight is a felony. Silence. Vanessa uncrossed her arms. You're bluffing. I looked at her. Try me. Craig took a step toward me. If you think you can come in here, and Mr. Drummond walked in. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, wearing a navy suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stood in the doorway and said, "Good afternoon." Craig stared at him. Who are you? I'm an elder law attorney, Mr. Drummond said evenly. I've been retained to review any legal documents being presented to Mr. Howard Keating and to ensure that his rights under both state and federal elder protection statutes are being fully observed. The room felt like a pressure cooker. Vanessa grabbed Craig's arm. Let's go, she whispered. Craig didn't move. He stared at me with something I'd never seen from him before. Not anger, not contempt, but the raw realization that he'd been caught, and there was no speech, no charm, no excuse that could undo it. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yeah, I says, it is. They left. The door closed behind them and the room was quiet again. Just me, Mr. Drummond, and Howard. Howard was looking at his hands. Then he looked up at me and for a moment he was fully there. Every part of him. Present, clear, aware. I knew you'd come back, he said. I sat beside him. I'm not going anywhere, Howard. He nodded. Good, because there's something I need to show you. Over the next 2 weeks, everything moved fast. Mr. Drummond filed an emergency petition to freeze the property transfer. He also requested a formal cognitive evaluation for Howard, which the court granted. The evaluation confirmed what I already knew. Howard had periods of genuine lucidity, but he also had moderate cognitive impairment that made him legally vulnerable to undue influence. The judge issued a temporary restraining order preventing Craig or Vanessa from presenting any legal documents to Howard without court-appointed oversight. Craig hired his own lawyer. They argued that Howard had willingly signed everything. But when the notarization was examined, the signature dates didn't match the notary's log. One document had been dated on a day the notary's office was closed. It fell apart fast. Craig's attorney withdrew. The property transfer was formally voided. And the district attorney's office opened a preliminary investigation into potential elder financial abuse. But that's not the part that broke me. It was a Tuesday. I came to visit Howard like I always did. But this time, when I walked into his room, he wasn't in his wheelchair. He was standing by the window. Actually standing. His hand was on the sill, and he was looking outside at the oak tree in the courtyard. He turned when he heard me, and he smiled. Not the confused, polite smile I was used to. A real one. The kind that reaches the eyes. Come here, he said. I want to show you something. On his nightstand there was a manila envelope. Old, creased, like it had been handled many times. He picked it up carefully and held it out to me. I had this brought from the house, he said, before they changed the locks. I asked my neighbor Phil to go get it from the lockbox. The blue metal lockbox. The one he'd told me about weeks ago during that flash of clarity. I'd thought he might have imagined it. I opened the envelope. Inside were 3 things. The first was Howard's original will. Notarized and dated 4 years ago, before his diagnosis, before the facility, before any of this. In it, he'd left the house to Craig, as expected. But there was a handwritten amendment, dated just 5 months ago. The amendment was witnessed by his neighbor Phil and a retired paralegal who lived 2 doors down. It was simple, clear, and legally sound. Howard had removed Craig from the will entirely. The house, the savings account, and a small life insurance policy, everything was reassigned. Half went to a local Alzheimer's research foundation. The other half went to me. I stared at the paper, then I looked at him. Howard, I can't. You can, he said firmly. And you will. I don't understand. Why me? He sat down slowly on the edge of his bed. His hands were trembling again, but his eyes were steady. Because you showed up, he said. Not for the house, not for money. You showed up with tangerines and a radio, and you sat with me when no one else did. My own son put me in here to rot. His wife looked at me like I was furniture, And you weren't even family anymore, and you came every week. My eyes burned. Howard, I'm not done, he said gently. When Craig left you, I should have said something. I should have told him he was a fool. I should have called you. I didn't, and I've carried that. This doesn't fix it, but it's what I can do now while I still can, I cried. I sat in that plastic chair in that small room that smelled like soap and old paper, and I cried until my chest hurt. Howard reached over and patted my hand. Once, twice, the way someone does when they've said everything that matters, and now they're just letting you feel it. Craig found out about the will change 2 weeks later. He contested it, of course. His lawyer argued diminished capacity, undue influence, coercion, every word I'd expected. But Howard's amendment had been executed during a documented period of lucidity, witnessed by 2 independent parties, and the retired paralegal had even included a handwritten note confirming that Howard had been alert, oriented, and had initiated the changes himself. The court upheld the will. Craig called me once after the ruling. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short. You ruined my life, Lydia. I hope you know that. I saved the voicemail not because I wanted to listen to it again, but because I wanted a record. Just in case. The investigation into Craig and Vanessa moved slowly the way these things do. But 6 months later, Craig was formally charged with attempted elder financial exploitation, a felony in Georgia. Vanessa was named as a co-conspirator. The charges didn't carry prison time, but they carried a permanent record, a fine, and the kind of public shame that doesn't wash off. Craig lost his job at the financial planning firm 3 days after the charges were filed. Turns out clients don't love being managed by someone accused of stealing from their own father. Vanessa filed for divorce 4 months after that. I didn't feel sorry for him. As for Howard, I had him transferred to a better facility, smaller, cleaner, with a courtyard that had actual flowers and a tabby cat named Ginger who slept at the foot of his bed. I visited him every Sunday. Some days he knew me right away. Some days it took a few minutes. And some days he'd look at me and say, "You're the one who makes the lemon cake." And I'd say, "Yeah, Howard, that's me." He passed away 14 months later on a Saturday morning in April. He was 81. The nurse told me he'd been listening to a Braves game on the little radio I gave him. He fell asleep in his chair by the window, the one I'd made sure was close enough to actually see outside, and he just didn't wake up. I was the only one at the funeral besides Phil, the neighbor, and a few of the staff from the facility. Craig didn't come. Melinda didn't come. Nobody from his family came. I sold the house on Sycamore Lane 6 months after that, used part of the money to pay off my student loans, put the rest into a fund for elder care advocacy in our county. I named it after him, the Howard Keating Memorial Fund. It provides legal aid to elderly people who are at risk of financial exploitation by family members. And every Easter I still bake a lemon pound cake. I bring it to the staff at the facility where Howard spent his last year. I leave it at the front desk with a note that just says, "From the girl who made the lemon cake." Because some people leave your life and you forget them. And some people, even the ones you didn't expect, even the ones who showed up late, they change everything. And Howard changed everything for me. Not because of the house, not because of the money. Because he looked at me in that small, quiet room, with his trembling hands and his steady eyes, and he said the thing I didn't know I'd been waiting 4 years to hear: "You showed up." And that was enough.